皆さん、
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now open the 2025 online symposium in the UN on the abduction issue. The symposium is co-hosted by the United States, Australia, Japan, the Republic of Korea, and the European Union, and is participated by members of the permanent missions of countries around the world to the United Nations and the members of the UN Secretariat. Streaming of the symposium is presented on the UN Web TV in English and on the YouTube channel of the Japanese government headquarters for the abduction issue in Japanese, Korean, and Thai. To open the symposium, Ambassador Yamazaki Kazuyuki, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Permanent Representative of Japan to the UN, will deliver his remarks.
山崎大使、よろしくお願い。
Ambassador, the floor is yours.
His Excellency Mr. Hayashi Yoshimasa, His Excellency Furuya Keiji, fellow permanent representatives to the United Nations, dear speakers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to co-host this online symposium at the United Nations on the abduction issue, together with the United States, Australia, the Republic of Korea, and European Union. The participation of the four esteemed ambassadors highlights the steadfast support of the international community in addressing this critical issue and emphasizes our collective commitment to resolving the plight of abduction victims. Japan, in close collaboration with our partner countries, has been striving towards the immediate resolution of this issue on the international stage, including in the United Nations. As abductees and their beloved families have advanced in age, we must truly accelerate our efforts in this regard. There is no time left. Today, we will hear the voices of families of the victims from Japan, United States, and Thailand. We are also joined by prominent experts on the international situation concerning North Korea to discuss and deepen understanding of ways to resolve the abductions issue and its importance to the international community. The international community has strenuously urged the immediate return of all abductees who have been detained in North Korea. This call is echoed in the annual UN General Assembly resolution on the human rights situation in the DPRK, which enjoys strong support from UN member states. In this regard, I would like to highlight the General Assembly convened a high-level plenary meeting on human rights abuses and violations in the DPRK last month, where the issue of abductions was raised. The convening of this meeting also underscores the urgent need to reinforce our collective commitment to resolving the abductions issue. I sincerely hope today's symposium will reconfirm the gravity of the abductions issue, show the international community's solidarity with the families of the victims who have suffered for years, and inspire further collaboration towards an immediate resolution. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Yamazaki. And next will be Mr. Hayashi Yoshimasa, the Chief Cabinet Secretary and the Minister in charge of the abduction issue of the government of Japan. He will deliver the keynote remarks.
I am Hayashi Yoshimasa, Chief Cabinet Secretary and Minister in charge of the abduction issue. On behalf of the government of Japan, I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to our co-hosts, the United States, Australia, the Republic of Korea, and the European Union, as well as to the United Nations officials for their invaluable cooperation in organizing today's symposium. I also wish to thank all of you who are participating in or viewing this event. To date, the government of Japan has officially identified 17 Japanese citizens as victims of abduction by North Korea. Moreover, there are many other missing people for whom the possibility of abduction by North Korea cannot be ruled out. 5 of the abductees returned to Japan in 2002, but the other victims still remain deprived of their freedom. Their family members are aging and passing away one by one. In February of this year, Mr. Arimoto Akihiro passed away. He was the father of Miss Arimoto Keiko, who was abducted in 1983 while staying in Europe. He was 96 years old and devoted his life to rescue his daughter until his very last days. His unwavering determination spurred me every time I met him. The government of Japan takes the current situation very seriously. Today, not only from Japan, but also from the United States and Thailand, families who have been tirelessly working on this issue are joining us on stage. The 2014 report of the UN Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in the DPRK referred to victims of the abductions from 10 countries other than Japan. The abduction issue is a violation of fundamental human rights that must be universally protected. Resolving this issue requires the international community to coordinate closely with each other and demonstrate a strong determination. I would like to express a deep appreciation for the continued understanding and support for the abduction issue from the United Nations and from countries and regions around the world. Realizing the return of Japanese abductees is, of course, under the responsibility of the government of Japan. Japan's basic policy on North Korea is to achieve the normalization of relations with North Korea in accordance with the Japan DPRK Pyongyang Declaration of 2002 by comprehensively resolving outstanding issues of concern such as the abductions, nuclear, and missile issues, as well as a settlement of the unfortunate past. This remains unchanged. In particular, the abduction issue, which is a humanitarian and time-sensitive issue with no time to spare, must be resolved immediately. This is also indispensable in order to envision a future in which both Japan and North Korea can enjoy peace and prosperity together. Prime Minister Ishiba expressed his intention to further intensify our efforts to engage with North Korea through various channels, stating that the two leaders must have candid talks and face squarely with issues before us to achieve a breakthrough in our relations. The government of Japan will continue to make every possible effort in close cooperation with the international community to realize the return of all abductees at the earliest time possible. At today's symposium, I believe we will deepen our discussions on the urgent need to resolve the abduction issue and on the benefits this will bring to both North Korea and the international community as a whole. Thank you very much for your attention.
林長官、ありがとう。
Minister Hayashi, thank you. We now proceed to remarks by the representatives of co-hosts. First, we shall receive remarks by Ambassador Dorothy Shea, acting representative of the United States to the UN.
I'd like to thank Ambassador Yamazaki Kazuyuki, Minister Hayashi Yoshimasa, and the Japanese government for leading today's symposium, which helps ensure continued international attention to the abduction of individuals from their loved ones. The United States is proud to co-sponsor this event. Thank you to the family members here with us today for bravely speaking out on this issue. The United States supports the families of the victims. That includes those abducted by North Korea, not only from the Republic of Korea and Japan, but also from every nation affected. President Trump met personally with abductee family members twice during his first term, and he continues to watch this issue in hopes of a resolution. Abductees like Yokota Megumi, a Japanese girl abducted in 1977 at the age of 13 while walking home from school. and Taguchi Yaiko, a 22-year-old mother abducted in 1978. For what reasons were this girl and this young woman taken at such young ages? Their families still do not know what happened or why. They deserve answers. Meaningful resolution has remained elusive for decades. As time passes, family members continue to age, and tragically, some pass away without ever learning the fate of their loved ones. We call for the immediate resolution of these cases to reunite aging family members and provide long overdue answers about the fate of their loved ones. The United States will continue to prioritize this issue until every family receives the information they deserve. To the families, your unwavering advocacy honors the memory of your loved one and keeps hope alive. Your courage in the face of uncertainty inspires us all. The United States stands firmly with you. You are not alone in this fight. Our hearts and our prayers are with you.
Thank you very much. That was Ambassador Dorothy Shea. Next is the remarks by Ambassador James Larson, Permanent Representative of Australia to the United Nations.
For attending this year's online symposium in the United Nations on the Abductions Issue. My name is James Larson, Australia's Ambassador and Permanent Representatives to the United Nations in New York. Australia is pleased to co-host this event today with Japan. This symposium is an opportunity to continue to raise our concerns about human rights violations in North Korea. It's important we do not remain silent in the face of such violations. Instead, we must use every opportunity to call them out. Members of the international community cannot allow North Korea's brazen human rights violations to become normalized. Australia continues to use platforms like the Human Rights Council and the United Nations General Assembly to call on the North Korean regime to respect, protect, and fulfill the human rights of its citizens, and to hold to account those who commit human rights violations and abuses. We were pleased to join the EU as part of the core drafting group of Resolution 5817 on the human rights situation in the DPRK, which was adopted by consensus by the 58th Human Rights Council on the 3rd of April this year. It's important the international community continue to take every opportunity to condemn the regression of human rights in North Korea and support efforts to collect evidence of crimes against humanity. We will continue to work with the international community to demonstrate consensus on North Korean human rights matters in the multilateral system. At the 47th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council's Universal Periodic Review in November 2024, Australia used its national statement to present 6 recommendations on how North Korea could improve its human rights situation. Disappointingly, North Korea explicitly rejected our recommendation to grant unrestricted access to United Nations Special Procedure mandate holders. Australia joins Japan in appealing to the international community for an immediate resolution to the abductions issue. Australia is gravely concerned by credible reports that escapees have been forcibly returned to North Korea. Returnees are at risk of being subject to torture and other cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. We reiterate our call on North Korea to engage constructively with the United Nations processes, end torture and prisoner mistreatment, abolish the death penalty, and immediately resolve the abduction issue. We urge all member states to reaffirm their commitment to the principle of non-refoulement under international human rights law. We call on North Korea to engage Japan on its offer of dialogue to resolve outstanding issues of concern, including abductions. Thank you very much indeed.
Those were remarks by Ambassador James Larson. Next, we will receive remarks from Ambassador Hwang Jung-kook, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Permanent Representative of the Republic of Korea to the United Nations.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a co-host with Japan, the United States, Australia, and the European Union, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the government of Japan for convening today's important event. I also wish to recognize the families of victims of abduction by the DPRK from the Republic of Korea, Japan, the United States, Thailand, and beyond for their tireless efforts to ensure that their loved ones are neither forgotten nor abandoned. In her 2024 report to the General Assembly, Ms. Elizabeth Salmon, Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the DPRK, emphasized that enforced disappearance, including in the form of abduction, is a serious crime that continues until the fate and whereabouts of the disappeared persons have been clarified. Decades have passed since many of these abductions have occurred, yet the issue remains painfully unresolved. Given the advanced age of many abductees and their families, the issue is more urgent than ever. My government once again strongly urges North Korea to resolve all outstanding issues related to abductees, detainees, and unrepatriated prisoners of war through a verified accounting of victims and the long-awaited realization of their immediate and safe return. It is my government's belief that the resolution of these humanitarian issues would also contribute to the ROK's efforts to promote the settlement of peace on the Korean Peninsula. This must not become a forgotten issue. Indeed, this is why the UN General Assembly and the Human Rights Council continue to adopt annual resolutions on the human rights situation in the DPRK, consistently demanding that Pyongyang immediately resolve all issues relating to the abductees. The international community must maintain its pressure and solidarity until tangible progress is achieved. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this annual symposium reflects our shared commitment to resolving these long-standing injustices committed by North Korea. We strongly hope that it will serve to build momentum toward their swift and just resolution. In closing, I wish to reaffirm that the Republic of Korea stands in steadfast solidarity with the families of the victims who have shown extraordinary courage and perseverance in their ongoing fight to bring their loved ones home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was Ambassador Hwang Jung-kook. Next is the remarks by Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary Stavros Lambrinidis, Head of Delegation of the European Union to the UN.
The organizers for the opportunity to co-host this important event. Now, only last month we met in the General Assembly Hall of the United Nations to hear the testimony of escapees from the DPRK in a special high-level meeting on the human rights situation there. The European Union and its partners are committed to making sure that the violations and abuses of human rights in the DPRK are not allowed to become a forgotten crisis. To put it in other words, it is critical that out of sight should not mean out of mind. And that is particularly important for the victims of abduction and their families. As today's event will help remind us, innocent people continue to pay the highest price imaginable. This is also why every year the European Union presents resolutions in the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council on the situation of human rights in the DPRK. These resolutions, as agreed, I stress, by the international community, call on the DPRK to immediately return all abductees. After so many years, what can possibly justify the inhumanity of not doing so? It is time for the DPRK to listen to the victims and their families. It should address all allegations of enforced disappearances, clarify the fate and whereabouts of all disappeared persons, and provide information to the families. The UN resolutions also reflect the united will of the international community to see a resumption of reunions for separated families. Our concern remains as sharp as ever for the welfare of unrepatriated prisoners of war and their descendants. And this is why the European Union remains committed to working with Japan and other partners in ensuring that the urgency of resolving the abductee issue remains at the forefront of international attention. Dear friends, over 10 years ago, the UN Commission of Inquiry concluded that there had been widespread, systematic, and gross violations of human rights in the DPRK, and that some of them may amount to crimes against humanity. Tragically, today, there's no sign of improvement, rather the reverse. We have seen continued reports of violations of human rights, the denial of fundamental freedoms, impunity, the absence of due process, and the absence of the rule of law. We have seen a continued lack of cooperation between the DPRK and many of the relevant UN human rights mechanisms, especially the Special Rapporteur. We have seen reports about an appalling humanitarian situation resulting mainly from government policies. We have, alas, seen the DPRK export that inhumanity by supporting Russia's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine and the massive humanitarian law violation that it inflicts on Ukraine's civilian population. And we have crucially seen no progress with regard to the international abduction cases or reunions of separated families. In the framework of our policy of critical engagement, the European Union urges the DPRK to take constructive action to resolve the issue. We are prepared to support interactions between the DPRK and UN human rights bodies and to support new diplomatic initiatives. And we will continue to use, at the same time, the instruments available to us, notably UN resolutions, to stress the urgency of the matter. Respect for human rights, friends, is an essential element in building peace and security. The Security Council must continue to address the human rights situation in the DPRK and its implications for world peace and security. Out of sight cannot mean out of mind. Thank you.
Those were remarks by Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis. We would now like to ask the Honorable Furuya Keiji, Chairman of the Superpartisan Parliamentarians League acting for the early rescue of Japanese victims abducted by North Korea, for his remarks. Chairman Furuya has long been devoted to the resolution of the abduction issue and served as the minister in charge between 2012 and 2014. Chairman Furuya, the floor is yours. I am Furuya Keiji, Chairman of the Committee of Congressional Members to Act for the Early Rescue of Japanese Victims Abducted by North Korea. Since the return of a few abductees 22 years ago, non-concrete progress has been seen. I am deeply frustrated as the chair of the committee by the fact that we need to organize this symposium again this year as we did last year. The state that committed the abduction is North Korea, an extraordinary dictatorship. That same North Korea is immersed in missiles and nuclear development, completely ignoring the repeated warnings by the global community and the United Nations. The same country is in lockstep partnership with Russia, receiving missiles and technology and offering in exchange many troops as human targets from North Korea. The two countries have gone as far as concluding a strategic partnership. Observing the recent exchange of attacks between Iran and Israel, North Korea is likely to further promote nuclear development. On the ground, they are completely ignoring human rights, and the economic and food situation continues to worsen. Believing that it can confront the major power, the United States, as an equal if they can put into practical use nuclear weapons and missiles, North Korea is fully devoted to their development. However, such abnormal behavior is not sustainable and should not be allowed to continue. We, the Congressional Members Committee, visited Washington, D.C. in May with the members of the Association of Families of Japanese Kidnapped by North Korea and the National Association for the Rescue of Japanese Kidnapped by North Korea, met with several senior officials of the administration and Congress and had meaningful exchange of views. Under the second and current Trump administration, former Senator Marco Rubio has been appointed Secretary of State. He played an important role as a senator back then in the adoption of a joint resolution by the House and Senate for Mr. David Snedden, an American citizen who is highly likely to have been abducted. Senator Rubio, who had recognized abduction not as a simple kidnapping, but state-sponsored terrorism, taking the position of the Secretary of State in itself is of enormous importance. During the first Trump administration, abduction was mentioned more than once during the Trump-Kim Jong-un meeting. This led to his speech at the UN referring to a 13-year-old girl who had been abducted. In other words, abduction is deeply engraved in the mind of President Trump. When we visited Washington in early May, the U.S. government announced that we would be also meeting with Secretary Marco Rubio, a Cuban. On the day of the morning, due to some change in the Secretary's schedule, it was Deputy Secretary of State Mr. Landau who received us, but the granting of a meeting at Secretary or Deputy Secretary level at the Department of State speaks of the seriousness of the U.S. government. We underscored the importance to arrange a meeting between the family of Mr. David Snedden, the subject of the joint resolution, and President Trump or Secretary Rubio to the senators, congressmen, and government officials we met. Why? Yes, the joint resolution was adopted, but the majority of American people are not aware of the high likelihood that their own people may have been abducted by North Korea. If the president meets the family of Mr. Snedden at the White House, there will be extensive media coverage, which certainly will impose huge pressure on Kim Jong-un. If a countryman is abducted, we will do anything, including mobilizing the military forces to get him back. That is the spirit of justice championed by the American people. Further, former ambassador to Japan, Senator Hagerty, and leading congressional members have begun to take steps for a new joint resolution in support of solving Japan's abduction issue. Needless to say, solving the issue requires the realization of a Japan-North Korea summit, but cooperation and partnership with our ally, the United States, is an important step to that end. The government and parliament are using every means available, including negotiations behind the stage, to solve the abduction issue, which is challenged by its time constraint as an issue of highest priority. Chairman Kim Jong-un's intention is to make the abduction issue forgotten. In order not to let that happen, the most important thing is to uphold our determination that we will never forgive abduction and to promote international public opinion that resolution of the abduction issue will lead to a bright future for North Korea. I am hopeful that today's symposium will contribute to such an end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Furuya. Next will be the direct appeals, the real voices by the families of the abductees and the missing persons. They are from Japan, the US, and Thailand. Firstly, we will listen to the younger brother of Miss Yokota Megumi and the representative of the Association of Families of Japanese Kidnapped by North Korea, Mr. Yokota Takuya. Miss Yokota Megumi was abducted in 1977 by North Korea at the age of 13 in the city of Niigata, Japan. Mr. Yokota, please. Good evening and good morning to you all. I am Yokota Takuya, representative of the Association of Families. Since my older sister Megumi was abducted by North Korean agents at the age of 13 while walking home from her junior high school, almost 48 years have passed. Her father Shigeru passed away in 2020 without being reunited with Megumi. Our mother Sakia is already 89 years old, and she is now the only surviving person in the parent generation among the Association of Families. Even if she is okay today, she may not be tomorrow. The fact is, there is absolutely no time left. Mr. Arimoto Akihiro, the father of the abductee, Miss Arimoto Keiko, passed away on the 15th of February, never seeing his daughter again. He was 96. As I imagine his excruciating agony, it is equally unbearable for myself. When the sovereignty of other countries and human rights are violated right in front of our eyes, the international community must not remain a bystander. Unless we respond resolutely to unilateral changes of the status quo by violence, the evil forces full of violence and fear will only become stronger. We who have all the freedom in our free countries are required to raise our voices against such unreasonable situations. There is only one requirement that we, the Association of Families, are demanding North Korea to fulfill. That is the return of all abductees all at once. We are also demanding that the deadline is to resolve and return them while the parents' generations are doing fine. If it so happens that the abductees, including Yokota Megumi, are returned fortunately after the only surviving parent, Yokota Sakie, has passed away, that cannot be described as a gratifying resolution. Why was not Megumi returned while the parents' generation was still alive? Most likely our anger will explode, and we will be asking the government of Japan and the international community to further strengthen the sanctions against North Korea. If such a situation occurs, we would strongly protest against the negotiations for the normalization of relationship between Japan and North Korea, and we will take a position of full-fledged confrontation. We would have to demand that you acknowledge that the resolution of the humanitarian issues by dialogue or behind-the-scenes negotiations was merely an illusion, and demand more severe measures. As we observe, Chairman Kim Jong-un, together with his daughter Kim Jae, we all know that he is devoting his abundant love over his child. If he has such an emotion, why can he not understand the feelings and the agony of our parents' generation that they wish to see their abducted family and brothers and sisters again? I strongly condemn the approach of North Korea of kidnapping a junior high school student of 13 and still continuing the hostage diplomacy. At this very moment, when we are in a phase of potential dialogue, I wish to see a resolute decision for the two countries to break the shell of mutual distrust and to envision a bright future for both the countries. Unless the abduction issues, which is a matter of human rights, are resolved, the Japanese public opinion and the international community will never forgive North Korea. We, the Association of Families, will not give up until we get all the abductees back. We will continue to fight for justice with words as our weapons. I ask the government of Japan. In North Korea, the only person with the authority to make decision is Chairman Kim Jong-un. No other individual organization has any power or authority to make decisions. I don't need to teach you, but the establishment of a liaison office or joint investigation committees in both Japan and North Korea do not resolve anything at all. Therefore, this matter of abduction can only be resolved through the Leaders' Summit meeting. Prime Minister Ishiba must share our anger, place yourself in our position, take it as your very own matter, and strongly press Chairman Kim Jong-un in his own words to resolve the issue. The government of Japan must now unite and make up its firm resolve. The responsibility of rescuing the innocent citizens of your country abducted from the territory of a sovereign state lies with the country of Japan, which is the party to this issue. Please change your attitude of depending on someone else. This is a matter that we, the Japanese ourselves, must overcome by our own means. At the same time, the cooperation with the international community is indispensable. It is critical to reaffirm our solidarity at this UN Symposium. I ask each and every country to firmly express to North Korea that the sanctions will not be relaxed unless the human rights issues are resolved. Please reproduce that scene again of 2002 when the 5 abductees managed to return after the Japan-North Korea summit meeting. Please do your utmost so that our mother Sakie will be able to hug Megumi while she can do so. We will never give up. To the Japanese people and the people of the international community, please do continue to fight together with us. I ask for your continued support. Thank you.
Mr. Yokota, thank you. Next, let us hear from Mr. Iizuka Koichiro, the eldest son of Ms. Taguchi Yaiko and the Secretary General of the Association of Families of Japanese Kidnapped by North Korea. Ms. Taguchi Yaiko was abducted in 1978 when she was 22. Mr. Iizuka, please go ahead. Good evening and good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to deliver my remarks. I am Izuka Koichiro, Secretary General of the Association of Families of Japanese Kidnapped by North Korea. My mother, Taguchi Yaiko, went missing 47 years ago on June 29, 1978, leaving behind myself a year-old baby and my sister who was 2. For 24 long years, we were left without knowing where she was. Then, in September 2002, at the Japan-North Korea Summit meeting, her whereabouts were unveiled. North Korea acknowledged that they had abducted her, but told the Japanese government that she died in 1987 due to a traffic accident in North Korea. However, through investigation by the Japanese government following the meeting, it was revealed that the facts were untrue. The report by North Korea that Taguchi Yaiko had deceased was without any basis. The death certificate presented by North Korea in 2002 was fake. In 2004, North Korea newly presented a document titled Traffic Accident Report, which had no reference to Taguchi Yaiko, nor to her Korean name, Ryune. North Korea has never offered information nor evidence regarding my mother ever since. There are 17 Japanese recognized by the Japanese government as having been abducted by North Korea, like Yaiko. 5 of them returned in 2002, but 23 years have passed and the 12 remain unrepatriated. North Korea explains that 8 of the 12 have died and 4 never entered into the country. However, there are many unconvincing points and contradictions in their account, and there is nothing to prove that they have died. An unbearably long period of 40 years have passed since abduction was committed, and there is not much time left to solve the issue. Unless the abductees in North Korea return to Japan while they are, as well as their families who have been waiting for them, are alive and healthy, true resolution of the issue is not achieved. Yet, it is extremely regrettable that families awaiting in Japan have passed away in recent years. Mr. Yokota Shigeru and Ms. Arimoto Kayoko in 2010, and in 2021, elder brother of Ms. Taguchi Yaiko and my adoptive father, Mr. Izuka Shigeo, passed away. Last February, Mr. Arimoto Akihiro, a member of the Association of Families who was longing to be reunited with his daughter, Ms. Arimoto Keiko, who worked tirelessly to solve the abduction issue, left us at the age of 96. The only surviving member of our association in the generation of parents is Ms. Yokota Sakie Megumi's mother, who is 89. The members who have passed away left us without ever being reunited with their loved ones. They never saw the smiles of their sons, daughters, brothers, or sisters since the abduction. Human life is finite, a fact taken for granted, but the majority of their lives have been spent, placed under confinement in North Korea, unreasonably robbed of the emotions that is experienced by any human being as their family grows, as their lives come to a turning point. This situation has continued for 40 years, and we are in deep rage. Let me repeat, the families waiting for the return of their loved ones in Japan, as well as the families waiting to be rescued out of North Korea, are aging. Abduction is an issue without the luxury of time. The average age of the abductees waiting to be rescued in North Korea is 75. Should there be more deaths that disable the reunion of abductees and their families, hatred and rage will be the only feeling we have left towards North Korea. We, the Association of Families, visited the United States last May as part of our international coordination activities, met with members of the U.S. Congress and the administration to explain to them our strategy and philosophy. The following messages were conveyed to our counterparts. 1. In the negotiations between Japan and North Korea, priority should be given to abduction since the time factor is tighter than nuclear and missiles. If Japan-North Korea negotiations progress ahead of the U.S.-North Korea negotiations, please understand that abduction may be prioritized over nuclear and missiles in the course of the negotiations. Abduction is an issue of life and death. There is a time limit, and the issue needs to be solved immediately. Please take note of this factor. 2. Even if the U.S.-North Korea negotiations take place prior to the Japan-North Korea negotiations, please raise the abduction issue. Please also understand that Japan will not provide any assistance if there is no resolution of the abduction issue. In other words, the immediate return of all abductees. Our association has no intention to obtain secret information from the repatriated abductees, nor to object to the normalization of Japan-North Korea relations, as long as all the abductees return immediately together. The only wish that our members have is to spend the very little time left with the abductees and live in a quiet environment here in Japan. Lastly, I call on the government of Japan to work towards an early realization of Japan-North Korea summit. Assume that there is hardly any time left of ourselves, the families. Lip service and excuses are unnecessary. Just save the lives that have been breached, the lives of Japanese citizens. Chairman Kim Jong-un and North Korea, please break away from the unnecessary steps made in the past and decide to immediately return all of the abductees at once, pursue lifting of economic sanctions and coordination with the international community, and proceed towards a new and constructive future. Chairman Kim Jong-un, we hope to you make a courageous and bold decision. I am eager to be reunited with my mother, who never existed in my memory.
Thank you to Mr. Izuka. Next is the son of Mr. Mizui Akira and the Secretary of the Family Association of Missing Persons probably related to North Korea, Mr. Mizui Toru. Mr. Mizui Akira went missing in 1988 at the age of 52. Mr. Mizui, please. Dear participants, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for this important opportunity today. My name is Mizui Toru. I am one of the secretaries of the Association of Families of Japanese Kidnapped by North Korea. I am the son of Mizui Akira, a missing person possibly related to North Korea. It has already been 37 long years since my father disappeared. My father, who was fond of fishing, often went out fishing almost weekly with his friend and business partner, Hayashida Yukio. On the day of this disappearance, the two of them set out by boat in the early hours of the morning and never returned. At first, it was thought to be a maritime accident. However, the sea was calm, and it was an unlikely situation of an accident. A search was conducted under the assumption of drifting at sea, but no trace of the boat or the two men was found. Normally, if a boat sinks, some parts will surface, but nothing did. This left everyone involved perplexed. As time passed, various pieces of information came in, leading us to suspect North Korean involvement. We also learned that suspicious vessels had been sighted in the same year and near that month. Furthermore, although there is no definitive proof, we later discovered that my father's final business was involvement in a business funded by North Korean capital. Given these circumstances, we filed a formal complaint to the police and began working with the Investigation Commission on Missing Persons probably related to North Korea. I was born and raised in Miyazaki Prefecture, and I currently work in the IT industry. I am now 66. When my father disappeared at the age of 52, I was 29. At the time, my father was running a real estate business. Our family consisted of my mother and two younger brothers. My mother passed away 20 years ago, and our brothers have died also due to illness. I am now the only surviving immediate family member. My father's only surviving blood relatives are the two grandsons, the grandson of Akira. It has been 37 years since my father vanished without a trace. We still have no leads, no information. We do not know what happened to him, where he is, or even whether he is still alive. Words cannot describe the pain and suffering that this uncertainty has brought to our family. Over the years, whenever progress seemed possible through agreements such as the Japan-North Korea Pyongyang Declaration or the Stockholm Agreement, we held on to hope. But sadly, none of these developments have led to any concrete change. We families of the missing persons formed an association and have continued our advocacy together. However, we are increasingly hearing of the passing away of elderly family members who longed to see their loved ones rescued. These people carrying deep sorrow and regret are dying before they can be reunited. This reality highlights the urgency of solving the abduction issue. Time is not on our side, and this is the most heart-wrenching reality. Successive Japanese prime ministers, ministers in charge have all pledged strong commitments that they will resolve this issue. But I must say honestly, sorry, not one of those promises has been fulfilled. Words alone cannot ease our suffering. Time continues to slip away. We earnestly urge the Japanese government to take more direct and concrete actions towards North Korea. Rather than relying, we specifically want Japanese political leaders such as former prime ministers or cabinet ministers to travel directly to North Korea and negotiate face-to-face. Unless high-level officials take initiative, I fear nothing will move forward. One concern we have is that insisting on the return of all abductees as a precondition may actually make negotiations more difficult for North Korea and may be causing a stalemate. We cannot help being suspicious just because of our utter desperation. Should there not be a more flexible strategy to break the deadlock? As families, we have done everything we can, including direct appeals to the international community, including UN agencies. The abduction issue is not only Japan's issue, it is a violation of fundamental human rights, and it should be addressed by the entire international community. We hope today's symposium is a crucial opportunity to reassert the world that the abduction issue is ongoing and that it requires urgent international attention. By hearing our voices firsthand, we hope the international community will take greater interest in this ongoing tragedy and that even a small step toward concrete action will be taken. Finally, I would like to again express my heartfelt gratitude to the government of Japan, the United States, Australia, South Korea, the European Union, and all others who organized and co-hosted today's symposium, as well as to everyone involved during the United Nations. And to all of you who have listened to my story, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mizui. Next, we will hear from Mr. James Snedden, brother of Mr. David Snedden, who went missing in August 2004 during his trip to Yunnan province, who possibly might have been abducted by North Korea.
に拉致された可能性が指摘されています。それではどうぞ。
Dear advocates for the termination of the seemingly endless human rights saga, my name is James Snedden. I'm the older brother of David Lewis Snedden, abducted by the DPRK from Western China 21 years ago. Today I will share emotions and pleas regarding my brother David. Yet this time I will use another's voice to bolster and lend strength to this overwhelmingly tragic human right condition referred to as North Korean human rights. My wonderful brother David is painfully a small piece of that story. Make no mistake, we deeply miss him and would move heaven and earth to help him find his God-given freedom. Yet his story is just one of many, literally millions of downtrodden DPRK citizen stories. It's ongoing, it's historic, it's unfathomable for most within earshot of my voice. It should be a rallying cry for any and all who feel a ping of humanity and have broad freedoms enjoyed daily. To embolden my message, I will amplify part of Tim Cho's personal experience as an escapee of the DPRK. Tim's story is beyond painful. As I listened to it, I found myself literally crying with him as he recounted his painful saga, growing up in and escaping from North Korea, a country he calls a prison country. He recounted oppression, a void of information access, forceful societal suppressions and brainwashing, forced labor as a child to pay back crimes of his parents, missing parents, child homelessness, famine and starvation with city officials collecting dead children's bodies every morning, forced viewing of gruesome public executions, complete with young children required to take front row seats. Godlike worship of the Kim leadership dynasty, a state of deep fear that was oppressively overwhelming. Simply put, his story is one of the constant need to exhaust all human capacity for survival under that evil regime. I can't do justice to his story today, but I want to highlight two specific vignettes that were especially impactful on me. During his second attempt to escape the DPRK, they climbed over a fence of an international children's school in Shanghai. Once inside, they requested help escaping. After some time, the principal returned, telling the group of 9 escapees they couldn't help and had informed the Chinese police. This little band of escapees locked arms and laid on the ground, refusing to leave the school compound. The Chinese police forcibly removed them as school children screamed and cried at the observed violence. All were removed, imprisoned, and told they would be returned to North Korea. Next, while in prison, his cellmates were several international criminals, South American, Japanese, South Korean, American, etc. They found this adolescent curious, listening to him cry nightly as they worried about repatriation and certain execution back in the DPRK. He said once they learned his story, he was taken in, cared for, and given extra food and treats by these criminals. He recounted how these criminals found their humanity, including a South Korean gangster taking the lead due to their common language. This South Korean gangster also gave him a Bible, though he was conditioned that his finger would wilt even by touching the book. In prison for the second time, he found the tiniest hope and grabbed on. He prayed for the first time having been taught by the gangster and began praying regularly to the God of our spirits. 2 months later, he was asked to come out and meet 2 men he feared were North Korean agents. He was told the Chinese government would do something very rare and deport him to the Philippines versus returning him to North Korea. When he asked why, he was told the following. One of the children who witnessed this brutal, violent removal of these escapees was so affected, she decided to email a reporter. We witnessed this horrible event with the escapees beaten, dragged, and forced into police vans. We were powerless to do anything. Can you do something? This reporter and several Western news outlets amplified the story, culminating in various groups protesting, demanding help for the 9 as they would be murdered if returned to North Korea. In his teary-eyed words, these groups didn't even know who we were, yet this galvanized humanity changed the Chinese government's intentions. This 13-year-old girl acted, affecting others, resulting in saved lives. So why do I share this? Even the most challenged and cast off of society found their humanity to help one in need, a young North Korean escapee. I asked, can we do better for this cause? But also, it took one voice, one email, and one reporter to change the probable life-ending unjust judgment of these escapees. One. Can any of you become that one voice for David? For the oppressed citizens of the DPRK, I implore you, consider Tim's story and then consider David's story. Consider each and all North Korean citizen stories. Consider all abductee stories and do something different. Do something now. Act. The U.S. Congress, having reviewed the facts presented, passed a resolution in 2018 stating they were resolved to use all the resources of the intelligence community and the State Department to determine the whereabouts of David Snedden. Yet there has been no action or results. Please, even one person therein, act. Our president meets with family members of Japanese abductees annually. Yet our family is never invited. Why? We and David Snedden are U.S. citizens. Someone, even one person, act. You can change the life course of David Snedden. You can help change the life courses of millions of North Korean citizens. Consider Tim's story. It happened. He's free and lives a very different emancipated life due to the act of one person. It's time for this to end. As history has shown, it takes only one person to act.
This was message from Mr. James Snedden. Last but not least, we will hear from the nephew of Miss Anocha Panchoi, Mr. Banjon Panchoi. Miss Anocha Panchoi went missing in 1978 and is believed to have been abducted by North Korea in Macau. Please. A good day. My name is Banjon Panchoi, and I am the nephew of Miss Anocha Panchoi, a Thai woman who was abducted by North Korean agent 47 years ago. I am here today as a representative of her family. Anocha went to Macau to work and then she disappeared. We learned of her disappearance by a letter informing us that she went missing on May 21, 1978. When we received this news, our entire family was devastated and overwhelmed with sorrow. All we could do was wait and hope for her safe return. Our family has always had limited financial resources, and at the same time, we had no means to travel or seek help directly. Then, on November the 1st, 2005, while watching the evening news at 7:30 p.m. on ITV, my father, Anocha's older brother, Sukkan Panchoi, heard a news anchor report that a Thai woman named Anocha had been abducted by North Korea. Father immediately informed all of our relatives that Anocha was abducted by North Korea and is alive. This news gave our family renewed hope, and we were filled with the possibility that Anocha might one day return to us. The next day, my father and I went to the municipal office in Sankampen to report the news to the mayor. We went to the ITV TV station to inquire about the source of the information of the news reported the day before. Soon after, a news reporter from ITV came to our house and interviewed our entire relatives. After the news aired, the Thai Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent representative officials to speak with our family and discuss possible support. In addition, Japan also sent delegates to meet with us and discuss the matter. Japan invited us to join meetings with the families of other abduction victims, encouraging mutual support and solidarity. It has now been 20 years since ITV first reported this news, although we still hope that Anocha will return, I continue to seek help from many organizations and agencies in Thailand. However, we only receive words like, "We will do our best to support you. Please stay strong." No one has ever taken real action to help us. I believe this is because our family comes from a poor rural area and we are socially disadvantaged. No one has helped us so far, and no one probably will, even going forward. The only hope that my family and I have now are the support and encouragement that the government of Japan and support organizations for the victims. These are what keeps me going. Finally, I would like to thank everyone here today for allowing me to speak. I offer my heartfelt sympathy to all families who have had loved ones abducted by North Korea. I am always very moved whenever I am given this kind of opportunity. I also want to express my deepest gratitude to many people and organizations in Japan who have not abandoned us. Thank you.
That was the message from Mr. Banjong Panchoy. That concludes the appeal by the families of abductees. We will now begin the panel discussion, which will be moderated by Professor Nishino Junya of Keio University in Japan. Professor Nishino is a researcher on international relations of East Asia and contemporary Korean politics and has published articles on North Korean issues. I hand over the microphone to Professor Nishino. Good evening and good morning. The theme is way towards an immediate resolution of the abduction issue with time constraints. We've already heard from the families. There's no time to lose to solve the abduction issue. The abduction issue has to be resolved while the parents' generations are still alive. It's not just Japan who is suffering. Even North Korea faces a time constraint. We want to see the repatriation of the abductees. So there has to be a Japan-North Korea summit, and high-level consultations for a summit is being waited. But on the other hand, recently, North Korea is sending troops to Russia, and they are supporting Russia with weaponry and artillery. They are deepening their relationship with Russia. And with the second Trump administration in power in the United States, it seems that the Trump administration is enthusiastic about communications with North Korea, but North Korea is not showing interest to date. So we want to convey to North Korea that the resolution of the abduction issue is to the interest of the North Korean state as well as to the international community. Further, there is the time constraint, and abduction is a human rights issue. So what do we need to do in order to make North Korea understand that it is a human rights issue? Those are some of the points that we wish to discuss. Further, the international community's environment is changing. With the Trump administration in place, what will be of the relationship between the United States and North Korea? And what is the situation regarding the United Nations regarding human rights issue in North Korea? What can be done in order to cause progress in this issue? These are some of the points that we wish to discuss. Let me now introduce to you the panelists. First, from the United States, we have with us Mr. Greg Scarlatoiu, President and CEO of the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea in Washington, D.C., which is a private sector organization. President Scarlatoiu, as an expert in the human rights issue of North Korea, has been active for many years and has appeared in hearings of U.S. Congress and in media outlets and has been explaining to the international community the human rights situation of North Korea. He's participating from Washington, D.C. very early in the morning. Thank you very much for your participation. And from ROK, we have former ambassador to the Republic of Korea to Japan, Ambassador Yoon Dok-min. Ambassador Yoon has been active as a researcher of North Korean issues and foreign relations, including Japan-ROK relations, and from July 22 to July 24, he served as Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the ROK to Japan. He is here in person. First, we will ask President Greg Scarlatoiu to make initial remarks for about 5 minutes, and then we will ask Ambassador Yoon Dok-min to speak for about 5 minutes, and then thereafter we would like to engage in a Q&A. Mr. Scarlatoiu, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Nishino. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to begin by thanking the governments and people of Japan, Australia, the Republic of Korea, the United States, and the European Union for co-hosting this symposium, for inviting me to speak, and for standing shoulder to shoulder with human rights defenders and abductee family members who have been seeking full transparency on the part of the DPRK, striving to resolve the tragic North Korean abduction conundrum. I wish to express my heartfelt compassion and sympathy toward the family members who have been longing for their loved ones and awaiting answers for too long. The abduction of Japanese nationals and citizens of other countries is at the core of issues that represent North Korean human rights abuses. To resolve the issue, we need strong international solidarity. This is an urgent humanitarian and human rights issue. Of the parents of the confirmed 12 Japanese abductees whose cases have not been resolved, only Ms. Yokota Sakie is still with us. The other parents have sadly passed away without meeting their long-lost children or exercising their fundamental right to know the fate of their sons and daughters. It goes without saying that there may be many more surviving parents, as the possibility of North Korean abduction cannot be ruled out for an additional 871 missing Japanese nationals. Today, we are faced with an even greater challenge than before. The DPRK has aligned itself with international aggressors, exporting millions of artillery rounds, ballistic missiles, other weapons, tunneling technology and know-how, and even thousands of special forces, proliferating instability and violence in return for cash that is filling the regime's coffers. The DPRK insists that they returned all Japanese abductees who are still alive, and the others are dead or not confirmed to have entered the North Korean territory. Since the DPRK has never proved the death of those abductees beyond reasonable doubt, and in the absence of physical evidence, the North Korean argument is not convincing. Japan continues to pursue its policy toward the DPRK based on the premise that 12 confirmed abductees whose fate the DPRK has not transparently confirmed are still alive. Pursuant to the May 2014 Stockholm Agreement, the DPRK pledged to investigate the abduction of Japanese nationals. The investigation was reportedly initiated, but the DPRK unilaterally announced its cessation. To this day, the government of Japan does not agree with the cessation. A bilateral agreement leading to the resumption of that investigation could be a practical step moving forward. That said, it is hard to believe that the controlling, totalitarian DPRK regime is unaware of the fate of the Japanese and other abductees and may need an investigation. Nevertheless, Japan and the noble cause of resolving the abductee issue could benefit from increased international cooperation and coordination among like-minded democracies and even other UN member states. Is it possible to re-engage the Kim Jong-un regime on the abduction issue? After all, the abduction was ordered by Kim Jong-un's predecessor. Moreover, he's in the process of revamping North Korean ideology, discarding what used to be some of the fundamental DPRK ideological tenets, including unification under the Kim regime. It may not be as difficult as before for the DPRK leader to dissociate himself from abductions perpetrated before his time. For that reason, there is a chance that abduction could be resolved even before other pressing human rights issues and even before overwhelming military and security challenges, including North Korea's nuclear and missile program. What benefits could North Korea have? In addition to improved relations with Japan and the possible lifting of unilateral sanctions, North Korea could build some trust on the international stage, which could lead to more beneficial rounds of engagement on different topics. Targeted incentives may encourage DPRK cooperation. Humanitarian gestures should be framed not as concessions, but as reciprocal trust-building measures in a clearly defined negotiation framework. If time allows during the discussion, I would also like to touch upon the merits of involving UN member states from the global south. Coordinating among other countries impacted by abductions, and diversifying the issue into other thematic frameworks, such as human trafficking. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by saying, Kume Yutaka, Matsumoto Kyoko, Yokota Megumi, Tanaka Minoru, Taguchi Aeko, Ichikawa Shuichi, Matsumoto Rumiko, Soga Miyoshi, Ishoka Toru, Matsuki Kaoru, Hara Tadaki, Arimoto Kenji, you are not forgotten. We will never rest. We will have no respite until we bring full closure to you and your families. Those abductees who are still alive must return to their families and hometowns. If, heavens forbid, some of them have passed away, the DPRK authorities must provide fully transparent answers as the only way to gain international credibility and bring closure to their families. Thank you very much.
President Scarlatoiu, thank you very much. And thank you for calling on directly to the abductees. And you also gave us hope that there is the possibility that DPRK may begin to take measures against this issue. Those words were encouraging. Later on, we will engage in Q&A, but President Scarlatoiu, you touched upon the possibility of cooperation with the Global South, and that's one of the questions I intend to ask you later. For example, at UNGA in December last year, the resolution on the human rights situation and DPRK's co-sponsors, if we look at the list of co-sponsor countries, we feel that the support isn't as extensive yet. So, in order to seek progress in human rights issues of North Korea, including abduction, how can we involve the Global South, which are faced with their own human rights issues within their own countries, and what are the possibilities we can seek in order to cooperate more? Those are some of the questions we wish to ask you later on, President Scarlatoiu. Now, from ROK, we have with us Ambassador Yoon Duck-min. Could you deliver your initial 5-minute remark?
네, 북한에 의한 이 납치 문제를 해결하기 위한 국제사회의 노력의 일환으로서의 오늘 회의. 이 중요한 회의에 제가 참석할 수 있어서
We are to speak about the international measures in order to resolve the abduction issue. I'm honored to be able to participate in this meeting. In late 70s, when I was a high school student, my friends and I went to camp at a beach on the western part of the ROK.
해수욕장에서 4명 정도의 고등학생이 실종되는 일대 사건이
And
있었습니다.
we found out
그때는 잘
that at a
몰랐었는데요.
nearby
한참 뒤에
beach,
알게
4 high school
됐었습니다만
students
그
went
학생들이
missing.
북한에 의해서
And
납치되었다는
years
걸 알게
after that
되었고
summer, I learned
그 중에 한
that they
친구죠.
were probably
김영남이라는
abducted by
친구가
North Korea.
일본인 여중생
And
납치
Kim
피해자인
Young-nim,
요코다
one of
메구미
those
씨와
who went
결혼했다는
missing,
사안도 나중에
seems to
알게
have
되었습니다.
gotten married
제가
with Miss
그
Yokota
일본
Megumi, who was
그
abducted
한국
in Japan when
대사로서
she was a junior
재직했을
high
때
school student.
납치 문제에 대한 관심을
During
갖고
my tenure as
특히 그 요코다
ambassador
메구미
to
씨가
Japan, I became
납치되었던
interested in
그
the abduction
니가타의
issue.
그
And I went to
자택도
Niigata
간 적이
where
있었고
Megumi was
정말
abducted
그
and went close
여중생이
to,
학교로부터
and I
귀가하는
visited
그
her home.
사이에 정말 한적한 주택가에서
When
그러한
she was
납치가 일어났다는
commuting
것을
back from her
알게
school,
되어서 정말
she was walking
믿을 수가
around a very
없었습니다. 그리고 니가타에서
quiet
조금
residential
떨어진
area. It
사도섬에
was
가서
unbelievable
소가 히도미
that she was
씨를
abducted. There's an
만났었습니다만
island Sado close
그녀가
to Niigata, and
납치되었던
I went to
것도
Sado
그
Island to
어머니와
meet with
함께
Miss
그
Soga
마트에 가는
Hitomi.
도중에 납치되었는데
She was
그
on her way
이후로
to
그
nearby
어머니의
supermarket
생사는
with her
전혀
mother when
모르게
she was
되었다라는
abducted.
말을 들었습니다.
Miss Soga
왜
has not
그
been able to identify the
13살짜리
whereabouts of her mother since
어린
that day.
학생과
A 13-year-old girl
20살짜리의
and
그런
a
젊은
20-year-old
분을 북한이
young
왜
lady.
납치를 해야 되는지
Why
전혀 이해를 할 수
did
없었고
North Korea
제
abduct
자신
these
상당한
people?
그런
It was
화를
beyond my
느꼈던 그런 것을 느낍니다.
imagination, and I felt
이 문제
deep
오늘
rage.
정말 그 보면서
This issue.
뭐 사건이 일어난 지 굉장히 오래되고 있습니다만 아주 그 가족들의
Years
오늘
have passed since the
피해자
incident
가족들의 아주
occurred,
간절한
but
호소를 들으면서
the
사실은 저도
families
납치
have
피해자
been making
가족의
appeals, and
일원입니다.
listening to
제
their
할아버지가
appeals,
한국 전쟁 당시에
I always
시골의
think
조그만
that
학교의 교장
I might
선생님이었습니다.
have become
북한군에
a
의해서
family of an
납치가
abductee.
됐습니다.
My
그때 이후로
grandfather
가족들은
was
전혀
a
생사를
principal of a high
모르고
school student,
특히 할머니
but
그리고
during the war,
저는 그
the
할아버지를 만난
North
적이
Korean
없습니다만
military
저희
abducted
할머니와
my
아버님,
grandfather. I never
아버지
met my
그리고
grandfather, but my
형제들은
grandfather and my father and my father's
그 할아버지의 생사도
brothers
모르는
and
채 결국
sisters
돌아가시고 말았습니다. 오늘 그
never found out
피해자들의
what
아주 그 간절한
happened of my
호소를
grandfathers
들으면서
until they passed away. So
조속한
today,
해결이
as I
필요하다. 저도
hear from the families
납치
of the
피해자분들과
abductees,
그 가족분들과 여러
I
번
once again am
만났습니다만
reminded of the
특히
urgency
사카의 씨
to resolve this issue.
와도 여러
I've
번
met with the
만났었습니다.
abductee
그분이
families
건강한 때
several times, with
요코다
Sakai-san as well.
메메구미 씨가 집으로 돌아와서 만날 수
And
있게 하는 것이 굉장히
Sakie,
중요하다는 것을 느꼈고
And I met
그
with
심정
Sakie-san,
우리
Yokota
저희
Sakie-san,
할머니와
several
저희
times, and I
아버지가
truly
느꼈던
hope
그
that
심정이
she
아마
is reunited
그러한
with her
심정이
daughter while
아니었을까라는 생각을
she's
갖습니다. 이
well.
문제와 관련해서는
My
가족들의
father's
그러한
love to my
애절한
grandfather,
그런
and my
호소와
grandfather's love to my
용기와 이런
father.
것에만 우리가
We
방관만
share
해서는
the
절대
same
안 된다라고
feeling,
생각합니다.
the courage of
국제사회가
the families, and the appeal
연대를
of the families are
강화하고
heard.
이
But we
문제가
can't just
해결될
sit
수
and do
있도록
nothing.
희망을 갖고
We have to have
끊임없이
stronger solidarity in the
필요할 때는
international
대화도 해야
community
되고
and continue
북한과
to
그리고
hold
모든
hope that
노력을
this
아끼지
one day
않으면서 이
will
문제
be
해결에
resolved,
나서야 된다고
and continue
생각합니다.
dialogue even with the
북한은
North
하루라도 빨리
Koreans.
이 문제를
North
해결하고
Korea
즉시 그 모든
should
피해자들이 가족의
resolve this
품에
issue
돌아갈 수 있도록
at the
조치를
earliest
취해야
possible
된다고
timing so that all
생각하고 저는
abductees can
그러한 점을
immediately
강력히
return to
촉구하고
their
싶습니다.
families. And I
감사합니다.
strongly encourage North Korea to take that step. Thank you. Thank you very much.
合わせていただきました。先ほどパネルディスカッションの冒頭にお話を差し上げた通りですね、この問題非常に
much for your very kind words. As I mentioned at the outset, there is a very strong time restriction. However, at the moment, North Korea is receiving support from Russia, and crypto asset, they are gaining revenue by theft of crypto asset, and the North-South relationship is uncertain. Under this situation, even if North Korea might have to change their attitude, would they want any support or assistance that they wish to have from Japan and ROK? If there could be any such assistances that they want to have, what could that be, and how could that be utilized for the resolution? So my question first goes to Ambassador Yun. So, with the initial remarks, although the time might be limited, we would like to go into the questions and answers. I have asked the first question, so may I invite President Scarlatoiu about how to cooperate with the Global South, how to spread the engagement. President Scarlatoiu, please.
Like-minded UN member states, including the 5 co-hosts of this symposium, have pressed for DPRK human rights improvement at the United Nations. Most of these states have represented the global North. Moving forward, it will be essential to involve UN member states from the global South. Many of them have experienced tragedy and human rights violations, including enforced disappearances, and could be sympathetic to this pressing human rights issue. Moreover, countries impacted by abductions should coordinate legal and diplomatic responses. National legislation such as South Korea's Protection and Support of Missing Children Act and Japan's law on the measures to deal with the abduction issue offer models for codifying rights, support mechanisms, and state responsibilities. Harmonized legislation can increase diplomatic leverage and establish shared benchmarks for accountability. Moving forward, it will be important to diversify efforts to resolve the abduction issue, not only geographically, but also thematically, framing the issue of Japanese and other nationals abducted by North Korea within the established legal and conceptual frameworks of human trafficking, including child and sex trafficking, could offer additional avenues for international advocacy, legal redress, and pressure put on the Kim regime in addressing this long-standing issue. Considering North Korean abductions through the light of human trafficking not only underscores the criminal and inhumane nature of the abductions, but may also drive new support from global anti-trafficking mechanisms and communities. The vast majority of victims were forcibly disappeared to gain labor and other skills for the state. Some victims were used to further espionage and terrorist activities. Women abducted from Europe, the Middle East, and Africa were subjected to forced marriages with men from other countries to prevent liaisons on their part with ethnic Korean women that could result in interracial children. Some of the abducted women have also been subject to sexual exploitation. Article 3 of the Palermo Protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, supplementing the United Nations Convention against transnational organized crime, adopted by the United Nations in 2000, defines trafficking in persons as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of the threat or use of force for the purpose of exploitation, including sexual exploitation, forced labor services, slavery, or practices similar to slavery. The stories of individuals such as Yokota Megumi, Soga Hitomi, and Romanian Doina Bumba fall within these definitions and are representative of the need to expand the conceptualization of North Korean abductions within the framework of human trafficking. Framing these abductions as trafficking crimes has practical advantages, including, first, international mechanisms. Framing these cases under the framework of human trafficking can invoke international legal frameworks and leverage reporting mechanisms such as the UNODC, the U.S. Trafficking in Persons Report, and the Office of the UN Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons. These bodies can be leveraged for greater advocacy and pressure. Second, moral and legal clarity, very important. While political considerations offer clout diplomatic negotiations, human trafficking is universally condemned. Presenting these cases as trafficking violations removes ambiguity and broadens the coalition of actors willing to support the victims and their families. Third, broadening the narrative is important, highlighting the experiences of non-Japanese victims such as Doina Bumba internationalizes the issue, showing it is not confined to Japan-North Korea relations, but a broader pattern of state-sponsored exploitation. As the panel discusses strategies toward the resolution of the North Korea-led abductions, integrating the frameworks of child trafficking, human trafficking, and sex trafficking could provide renewed urgency, international leverage, and legal grounding. The stories of Yokota, Soga, and Bumba are not only about abduction. They're about exploitation, coercion, and the denial of basic human dignity. Recognizing them as trafficking victims underscores the severity of North Korea's crimes and strengthens the moral imperative for immediate resolution.
President Scarlatoiu, thank you very much. International support towards the resolution of abduction has to be extended, and thank you for those tips and advice on how to do that. Ambassador, I've already asked you the first question, so could you respond to that question? Towards the resolution of the abduction issue, what kind of support or cooperation would North Korea wish to obtain from Japan or the HRNK, so much so that she would be willing to change her behavior? Ambassador Yoon, could we hear from you? What advice would you have?
과거에는 북한이 굉장히
In the
악화됐던
past,
그런
North
경제
Korea
상황을 호전시키기 위해서
economy was worsening, and in
경제
order
지원을
to
굉장히
improve
바라던
its
그런 시기도
economic
있었다고
state,
생각합니다. 특히
there was a time
일본과의
when
국교 정상화에
North Korea was
따라서
seeking economic assistance,
흔히
and
얘기하는
through
식민지 지배에 대한 청구권으로서 받을
normalization
수
of
있는
diplomatic
거액의
relations,
그런
maybe they could
청구권
have
자금이 기타
received
북한의 그 경제 재건을 위해서 굉장히 중요한
claims
그런
of damage from the
자원이 될 수
Japanese
있었기
government
때문에
from wartime, and they thought that they could
일본과의
receive
수교를 원했고
such
그런
economic
과정에서
assistance
여러 가지
from
문제
Japan
해결에
in order to
그런
finance
가능성에
its
대한
economy,
얘기가
and
나왔었습니다만
there were some
점점
dialogue of
핵무기
possibility
개발로
to
그런
normalize
실증점이 더
ties with Japan.
놓여졌고
But
또
after that,
핵무기 개발 자체를 또 카드로
North Korea
쓰면서 경제
tilted towards
지원을
nuclear development,
얻어내려고
and they
하는
used that
그런
as a
것이
leverage
있었습니다.
in order to
아마도
pull out economic
김정일
assistance from other
시대까지는
countries.
일정
That's
부분 그런 경제
the
협력,
modus
경제
operandi.
지원에 대한
Until
것이
Kim
우리가 갖고
Jong-il,
있는 하나의
there was
지렛대로서
certain
북한과의
incentive
대화를 할지
for economic
협력을
assistance,
하기 위한
and that
하나의
was used by
도구가
countries like
됐었는데
ourselves to
김정은 시대에 들어가면서 핵무기
have
개발이
them come to
일정
the
부분
table.
궤도에
But
오르면서
since
오히려
the
그것에
Kim
더 박차를
Jong-un
가하게
administration
되고
came into power,
어떤 경제
they
지원,
were
경제
able
재건과
to
관련된
progress with the
모습은 오히려
nuclear
흥미를
weapons
점점
development,
잃어가고 있는
and
것이
therefore
아닌가라는 그런
they
북한
seem to have
자체가
lost
그런 생각이
interest
들었습니다.
in economic
그런데 최근에
assistance, and that is
아시다시피
my
북한이
impression
우크라이나
regarding
전에
the recent
참전하면서
attitude. But as
러시아와의
you know,
군사 동맹을 다시 부활하고
North Korea
또
is
그에 따른 여러 가지
engaged in the
북한산의
Ukraine war,
포탄,
and
탄약,
they've
병기들을
resumed
러시아에
its
제공하고
military
또
agreement with
다수의
Russia.
북한군이
They are
참전하는 것에
offering
대한 또
weapons,
대가도
artillery, and
받아냄으로써
troops to
일정
Russia,
부분 어떤
and
외화
they are
또는
receiving
북한이 부족했던
something in
부분을 채울 수 있게
exchange.
되는
So
그런
foreign
효과를
currency
거두고 있는 것이 아닌가 좀 생각이 됩니다.
is being
그래서
gained, and I think
점점 어떤
they
우리가 갖고
are
있었던 강점이었던 경제
gaining something
협력과
from
경제
Russia in
지원과
order to
관련된
fulfill
그런
the gap
또
of foreign
일본과의
currency.
수교에
So
따른 그런 필요성에 대한 그런 북한의 그런
regarding the
생각들이 좀 변하게
necessity to
되는
normalize
계기가 된
diplomatic
것이
ties
아닌가.
with Japan,
상당히 유감스러운
that
일이지만
this
그런
could
현상을
be
지금
a
우리가 겪고 있는 것이
trigger
아닌가라는
for
생각이
them to
같습니다.
rethink
근데
about
그럼에도 불구하고
foreign
저는
relationship, and
북한이
it's
지금
unfortunate
노리는
that they are
것이
doing that, but it could be a
물론 핵무기
trigger.
개발이
So
거의 다
what is
완성이 되었다라는 생각을
North
갖습니다.
Korea
이미
planning to do? We think that they are close to completing the nuclear program. Iran did not have nuclear
이스라엘
weapons,
미국의
so
그런 사태도
the
있었습니다만
recent situation happened
북한은
because they didn't have nuclear weapons. But what about North Korea? They conducted 6
국제사회가 북한의
rounds of
핵무장을
tests,
인정을 하지
and
않고
yet
계속해서
the
제재를
international
가하고
community
있습니다.
is not
북한의
allowing it to
입장에서는
possess
제재
nuclear
없는
weapons,
핵 보유
and
국가가 되는 것을 원하고 있고
and North
그러한
Korea is being
케이스가
sanctioned.
파키스탄,
So
인도와 같은
they
또는
want to
이스라엘과
become
같이
a nuclear
미국이
state
묵인해
without
주기를
being
바라고 있기 때문에
sanctioned.
아마 그것이
It's like
앞으로
Israel
북한과
and
미국
Pakistan.
사이의
They
하나의
want the United
거래
States to
가능성이 나올
permit
거고
North
그
Korea to have
과정에서
nuclear
일정 부분
weapons. So
하나의
they think that they can use
납치
that as a
문제와 여러
part
가지
for
인도적 문제를
negotiation
해결할
with the
수 있는
United
또
States.
그
So what
루트가
about
생기지
the
않을까라는 점도
humanitarian
있을 것
issues
같습니다.
like
그럼에도
abduction,
불구하고 저는
maybe there could be a
한국도
channel there to
일본도 이
resolve
납치
this
문제 해결을
issue.
위한
But ROK
끈질긴
and
그런
Japan,
생각을
in
필요로
order
하고
for us to
끊임없이
resolve the
북한과
abduction
대화의
issue, we
노력도
need
해야 되고 또
perseverance.
교류도 해야
And
되고 또
we
협력
need to
또 때에
continue our
따라서는
efforts to
지원할 수
have
있는 것들도
dialogue
지원해
with
인도적
North
지원을
Korea, and we have to
해주면서
continue
문제
exchange.
해결을
If we
꾀해
can
나가야
provide
되지 않을까라고
humanitarian
생각하고 있습니다.
assistance, we should do so in order to seek the resolution of this issue.
続きまして
Thank you very much. May I go on to the next question? Ambassador Yoon, please.
Thank you for the answer. And as you have rightly pointed out, the situation surrounding North Korea is becoming harsher. They now have sophisticated technology in terms of nuclear and missiles, and they are trying to have deeper ties with Russia. So they've come up with the two hostile state doctrine in their inter-Korean relationship, and they are rejecting dialogue with ROK. On the other hand, on 4th of June, a new administration came into power in the ROK. He was seeking mitigation of the military tension on the peninsula, and it seems that the ROK government is seeking to have dialogue with North Korea. So with such changes occurring, what about the abduction issue and humanitarian issues? In order to seek progress, what kind of approach is necessary, or what kind of approach do you think is effective? Ambassador Yoon, can you elaborate on your ideas? I do understand that this is quite a difficult question, but your wisdom will be much appreciated. And President Scarlatoiu, I also wish to ask you a question.
Regarding the need to further expand the cooperation amongst the UN member countries, North Korea, for example, at the UN General Assembly high-level meeting held in May of this year, in such areas, North Korea is repeating its unilateral assertion about their position. But amongst the North Korean human rights issues, what do you think is the unique characteristic of the abduction? In order to resolve the abduction issue, I would like to ask you about your outlook or possible approaches. Of course, you already discussed about this, but I would like to ask you to further add your comments, please. So starting with Ambassador Yoon, please.
저도 굉장히 유감스러운 일이긴 합니다만 우리 한국 정부 중에 가장 전향적인 대북 정책, 북한과의 대화 노력을 했던 정부가 문재인 정부입니다. 그런데 그 문재인 정부가 미국과 북한 사이에 핵 문제를 둘러싼 중재 노력도 굉장히 했고 북한에 대한 여러 가지 지원도 하고 그래서 역사적인 남북 정상회담도 몇 차례 했던 적이 있었습니다. 그럼에도 불구하고 결국은 그 개성에 있던 남쪽의 그런 한국의 연락사무소를 북한이 폭파시키고
industrial complex. The liaison office was bombarded by North Korea, and inter-Korean dialogue was suspended. And inter-Korean relationship turned into a hostile relationship. And North Korea stated that ROK is a hostile country. What about the new Lee Jae-myung administration? Once again, the Lee Jae-myung government is beginning efforts for dialogue. They're saying that they will make efforts to have dialogue with North Korea. The North Koreans need to respond to ROK's call, and that would lead to change in the regional environment. Of course, there are humanitarian issues. For example, abduction. Abduction is not just a Japan issue. There are several abductees in ROK. As part of the military, there were prisoners of war during the Korean War. And during the Korean War, even the ROK civilians were taken away by North Korea. And there were many abductees of ROK who were abducted after the Korean War. So we can't ignore this. There has to be the
또 이들과
overall
관련된 여러 가지
improvement of
인권 보호에
humanitarian
대한 노력
situation in
이런
North Korea.
것들을
There are many
확실하게 해나가는
escapees
것이
from
필요하다고
the
생각하고 아마도
country,
새로운
and we have
정부도
to
그러한
protect their
생각
human
속에
rights.
있을 거라고
These
생각하고
steps have to be
저는
taken,
보다
and Lee
적극적인
Jae-moo
그런 역할을 기대하고 있습니다.
administration is thinking about this, and I'm hoping for a more active solution.
Thank you very much. President Scarlatoiu, your additional comments, please.
Certainly, when it comes to North Korean human rights, there is no easy solution. And yet, in order to improve human rights in North Korea, systemic, fundamental reform is needed. The issue of abductions by North Korea is an exception. What it would take would be not necessarily structural reform, but a political decision made at the very top and directives issued from the very top, supposedly by the very supreme leader, to tackle, address, and resolve this issue. What the international community would do to support that effort, for example, the establishment of a UN-led contact group could be an idea, a group that could operate within a clear mandate, including time-bound goals for disclosure of abductee information, repatriation, and access for international monitors. This could be, of course, a controversial issue, but one could consider inclusion in denuclearization frameworks and also time-limited accountability mechanisms. The DPRK could be given a grace period to tackle this issue and provide some answers. If that doesn't happen, then there could be accountability mechanisms put into place, whether we're talking about ad hoc tribunals or national courts in effective countries that could consider universal jurisdiction. Of course, as mentioned earlier, humanitarian incentives, if provided, should be framed not as concessions, but as reciprocal trust-building measures. And most importantly, I do represent international civil society at this symposium. Strengthening civil society engagement will be of the essence. Civil society organizations secure the information, the documentation relevant to this issue. And over the years, these organizations have engaged in very effective outreach and advocacy.
President Scarlatoiu, thank you very much. We've already heard from the two panelists comprehensive approaches, many ideas to solve the abduction issue, but we still have some time, so I would like to ask one final question, a common question to both of you. The Japanese government, Prime Minister Ishiba, has been saying that there has to be frank discussion between the leaders, and we have to squarely confront North Korea through dialogue and direct conversation. In order for us to resolve the abduction issue, what kind of approach do you think would be effective to persuade North Korea to respond to our call for dialogue? You've already hinted some clues in your responses made so far, but once again, can you share with us your thoughts regarding what approach would be possible? From the families, we've heard that they want to see the return. So they want to see the summit, and they want to see the high-level consultations that would lead to a summit between the leaders. So from such perspective, what kind of approach do you think would be effective? I ask the two panelists. First, President Scarlatoiu, and then Ambassador Yun, in that order. President Scarlatoiu.
Thank you very much. Focus on trust building could be an effective way of tackling the issue while approaching North Korea. Of course, the focus is on North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile program, on North Korea's proliferation of instability and violence to international aggressors and troubled regions. We also know that North Korea has breached pretty much each and every multilateral and bilateral agreement it has entered, from the NPT to the Geneva Agreed Framework of 1994 to the six-party talks to the Leap Day Agreement, and the list goes on and on. President Ronald Reagan's favorite Russian proverb, as you all remember, was trust but verify. And when it comes to North Korea, we talk about CVID, complete verifiable irreversible denuclearization, or FFVD, full final verifiable denuclearization. Before verification, we need trust. Addressing human rights in general, and in particular, this issue of abductions of Japanese and other foreign nationals by North Korea, could provide the DPRK to build some much needed trust that could provide a platform for engaging in negotiations and discussions on other topics as well.
President Scarlatoiu, thank you very much. Lastly, Ambassador Yun, please.
예, 저는 그 한국의 그런
Thank
납치
you.
피해자 가족들로부터 왜 한국은 일본 정부만큼 그렇게 못하냐라는
I've
항의를
heard from
받았던 적이
families
있습니다.
of the
일본
Korean
정부는
abductees
상당히
and
제가
RK
생각하기에는
abductee
이 문제
families
해결에
have
참 최선을 다하고 있다라는 그런
complained
생각을
that
갖습니다.
the
문제
RK
자체가
government
상당히
is not
어려운
supporting as
문제라고 생각하고
generously as the
또
Japanese
이것을 해야
government.
될
This is a very
북한이
complicated and
여러 가지
deep-rooted
이런
issue,
노력을 응하지
and
않고
it's
있는
North
점이
Korea
참
who is
안타까울
the
뿐인데
main actor who has to respond, and it's
두
regrettable
가지의
that
그런
North Korea hasn't
접근이 필요하다고
responded.
생각하는데 지금 뭐
And I think there
그러한
are
점을
two
충분히
possible
일본
approaches that
정부도
should be
생각하고
taken,
있다고 생각하는데
and the government of
그 이해
Japan is already assuming
당사자들과의
those two
국제사회의
approaches,
연대입니다.
but
특히 미국, 한국,
the
일본이 이 문제 해결에
US,
가장
ROK,
중요한
Japan,
플레이어가
who
될 수 있다고
are the
생각하고
interested parties, must
여기에
coordinate between each
결코
other. They
그
can become
연대에
important
있어서의 그
players.
틀에서
And
생각해야 될
in
것이 중국과 러시아의
establishing
역할이라고
such
생각합니다.
coordinated
그래서
solidarity, it's
이
China's
문제가
role that we
반드시
should be
해결될 수 있도록
contemplated.
하기 위해서는
In order
그들의
to make
협력도
this
필요하다는 것을
issue
염두에 두면서 접근하는 게
resolvable,
필요하다고
we
생각합니다.
need the
또
cooperation of
하나는
China, and that
역시
should be
직접
kept in mind.
북한과의
Another point
그
is
대화를 하는 것이고
directly
그 대화에 있어서는
having a
납치
dialogue with
문제를
North Korea,
해결하는
and
것이
in that
이것이
dialogue,
북한에게
resolving
이익이
the
된다는
abductee
점을
is going to be
강조하고 또 그렇게 될 수
an
있도록 또
advantage and to the
역할을
benefit
일본이
of North
해주는
Korea.
것이
We assert
필요한
that to
것이
North Korea,
아닌가라는
and
생각을
Japan
갖습니다.
must play a role to make North Korea convincing.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Yun Duk. Our two panelists have discussed how to aspire for the early resolution because there is a time limit. And from a multiple perspective, we have received deep insights. Once again, I thank both experts for their comments. In particular, the international cooperation is extremely important, which was reaffirmed. Of course, the direct party is Japan. The direct parties to the issue, the dialogue between Japan and North Korea, and the summit leaders meeting will be necessary. That's, of course, but the Republic of Korea, the US, Russia, China, the cooperation of all these countries are indispensable. Not only that, we need the support of the Global South. We need to form a cooperative platform with many more countries across the world. That has been the point of discussion by our panelists. I am very grateful. I may sound repetitive, but this is a time-sensitive issue. In order to resolve this issue, not only the panelists, but we continue to ask for your continued interest and support. Today, there were many insights, which is very important, and on diverse topics. Once again, I express my heartfelt gratitude to the panelists. May I conclude this part of the session, and I will hand over the microphone to the moderator.
Thank you very much. To conclude the symposium, Ambassador Yamazaki Kazuyuki, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Permanent Representative of Japan to the UN, will deliver closing remarks. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, distinguished representatives, speakers, panelists, and participants, thank you all for the rich and fruitful discussion we have had today. Your participation has been truly invaluable. I extend my deepest gratitude to the distinguished ambassadors from the United States, Australia, the Republic of Korea, and the European Union for their powerful and unambiguous messages of support. Their words echo the international community's steadfast commitment to resolving the abductions issue. The unified voice amplifies our shared resolve to ensure the immediate return of all abductees. Today, we have heard heartfelt testimonies from families from Japan, the United States, and Thailand. They laid bare the profound suffering and ongoing anguish they have endured for years. These stories serve as a compelling reminder of the urgent need for resolution. I also express my sincere appreciation to our esteemed panelists for their deep and insightful contributions. Their expertise is crucial in enhancing our understanding and shaping our strategy. In closing, I reiterate Japan's unwavering commitment to exerting every effort toward the immediate resolution of the abduction issue. I trust everyone present today will stand united and collaborate toward this goal. I thank you.
山崎大使、
Ambassador Yamazaki, thank you very much. This concludes the online symposium in the UN on the abduction issue. It was a long event, but thank you for your attention and for staying until the end.